Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos
Hello,
días.
good morning. I hope you're having a great
Bienvenidas y
day. We
bienvenidos
welcome
a
each
todos
and
los
every
que
one
nos
of you.
acompañan
Thank you for being
tanto en
part of
Zoom
this
como en la
event
transmisión.
via Zoom, via the streaming at YouTube. This is the second day of top level dialogues, and today we have the presence of Mr. Stuart Haynes from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We welcome you, sir, on behalf of the General Secretary Álvaro Velarca. So we thank you for honoring us with your presence and your keynote as a keynote. To introduce Mr. Stuart Haynes and his presentation, the floor is open for Brandon Perez Gonzalez, sub-lead of strategic partnerships.
Ms. Gonzalez, I'm going to introduce Stuart Haynes, who's currently serves as the Executive Director of St. Vincent and the Grenadines of the National Insurance Services, a position he has held since February 2017. He is a fellow of the Faculty and Institute of Actuaries and a chartered financial analyst by profession. In 2018, Mr. Haynes was elected for the Bureau of the International Social Security Association, ISA, based in Geneva, Switzerland. Further, in 2020, he was appointed as ISA's vice chairperson of the Technical Commission on Investment of Social Security Funds and appointed as a member of ISA's Finance Committee for the triennium 2023-2025. He serves as the focal point for ISA, representing the social security institutions in the English-speaking Caribbean. In addition to his capacity as Executive Director of the NIS, Mr. Haynes is currently serving as a Director of the Financial Services Authority, the East Caribbean Financial Holding Company, and the Eastern Caribbean Home Mortgage Bank. Mr. Stuart Haynes holds a BSc in Actuarial Science from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and a Master in Actuarial Management from Cass Business School, London, with a specialty in investment management. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Stuart, and I let you the floor to speak on the CARICOM Social Security Agreement. Go ahead, Mr. Stuart.
All right. Good morning, buenos dias. It's a pleasure for me to be addressing this very important session that speak across Latin America, the Caribbean, to bring the CARICOM experience. When we see the word CARICOM, it's mean the Caribbean community, and we typically focus on the English-speaking Caribbean. So my conversation this morning would be the CARICOM Social Security Agreement. I also want to use this opportunity to thank the leadership of CIS for allowing us to share our experience, how we have strengthened the platform to protect migrant workers within the CARICOM space. So by way of introduction, the government of the English-speaking Caribbean territories have fortified or strengthened the social protection mechanism for intra-regional migration. That means moving within the CARICOM countries. We have like 16 of us. And that was attempted through two principal modalities. There's what we call the CARICOM Social Security Agreement, and also there's the Convention on Social Security in the OECS. So the CARICOM is a wider Caribbean, 16 territories, and the OECS is a subset of CARICOM, consists of 9 countries. And the aim of these agreements is fostering unity among member states by functional cooperation in the area of social security. How can the social security systems in the region work together to provide protection to persons who are moving from one country to another? And this agreement is an integral part of facilitating the free movement of labor and protection of social security rights. So we maintain and we protect social security rights under this agreement. So I'll speak to this CARICOM Social Security Agreement. This is one of the most significant coordinated development for social security systems since inceptions. And we have social security systems been in inception 50 years or more. But this is singularly the most significant coordinated development in the regional social security system. In 1996, we had like 5 CARICOM governments sign on to the CARICOM Social Security Agreement. But by July 2002, we had all the English-speaking CARICOM member states had ratified and enacted this agreement. So this agreement is by law. It's intended to protect the CARICOM nationals' entitlement to social security benefits. We have the terminology where you move in the region and you don't lose. And this agreement provides equity, important equality in treatment when moving from one country to another country in the CARICOM space. The OECS Convention on Social Security is a separate arrangement, and this potentially covers only 9 member states of the sub-region. And it's intended to facilitate free movement of labor. It promotes equality in treatment of workers within Social Security. Has only been enacted in 2 unratified countries, Grenada and Montserrat. So in practice, this agreement is almost non-existent. This is the OECS Convention on Social Security. But for the purpose of this conversation, I would speak to the CARICOM reciprocal agreement among the CARICOM countries. So the CARICOM reciprocal agreement, what are the coverage? What are the members? We have countries like Antigua, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and Trinidad. These are the CARICOM member states. These are the full member states, and all governments have signed on to this CARICOM Social Security Agreement. And that is a significant achievement by these governments. But we also have what we call affiliated members. British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, and Anguilla. These 3 members have not yet signed on the CARICOM Reciprocal Agreement. But what does this CARICOM Social Security Agreement covers from a way of benefit? It mainly covers the long-term benefit, the pensions. Invalidity pension is covered. Disablement pension is covered. Old age pensions are covered. Survivors' pension are covered, and any death benefit in the form of pensions. So it covers all member states, and it covers certain benefits, which are the pensions. So the short-term benefits, such as sickness and maternity, are not covered under the CARICOM Social Security Agreement. The benefits, what's the benefit of the CARICOM Social Security Agreement? It promotes equity in the treatment of migrant CARICOM workers among territories. So if Stuart Haynes now, who resides in St. Vincent, move to St. Lucia, when I move, I will pay Social Security under St. Lucia. I won't have to pay multiple St. Vincent and St. Lucia. So I'll move to St. Lucia, I'll pay under St. Lucia. And on retirement, my benefit will be determined by looking at the contribution made in these 2 countries. So it promotes equity in treatment. The St. Lucia Social Security system won't discriminate because I migrate from St. Vincent to St. Lucia. So it's equal treatment. It protects and maintains social security rights. Social security is a fundamental human right within the CARICOM space and wider. And social security system in the implementation of this agreement ensure that these fundamental rights are protected, whether you are a national of the country or whether you are any other CARICOM national, right? And the contracting parties, based on our experience over 20-something years, have been honoring their obligations under this agreement. St. Vincent has been honoring, St. Lucia has been honoring, Trinidad has been honoring, Barbados has been honoring their commitment with regards to all payment under this agreement and protecting and preserving the rights of our CARICOM nationals. Participants are either under this agreement receive similar benefit as if they remain in one country, or in other cases, they receive a higher benefits. So in no case they are worse off by moving. Actually, in some cases, you are better off. And I will show numbers with regards to where you're better off. So it's actually protect you from that baseline. So for instance, if I stay St. Vincent for 20 years, for instance, I would have a replacement rate of 35%. If I travel to St. Lucia, I work 10 years in St. Lucia, 10 years in Vincent, then I would qualify for pensions in both countries, and I would get pensions from the two countries. And my pension I get from the two would be higher. So it protects the right of CARICOM national moving from one country to another. I just give a snapshot of the design of Social Security, because the design of the systems are important, because of the design, it could impact in terms of the equality of the payment to the beneficiary, both from the institution and from the individual. So we see Anguilla has a contribution rate of $10. We see also the weight ceiling, the maximum amount varies across countries and varies in terms of currency. The Bahamas use the Bahamian dollars. The Barbados use the Bajan dollars. The Belize use the Belizean dollars. British Virgin Islands use the US dollars. Dominica use EC dollars. Ghana use Guyanese dollars. Jamaica use Jamaican dollars. So there are different currencies across the CARICOM countries. And they are different in terms of ceilings, right? So we haven't normalized the currency of operation, or we'll say choose a baseline currency. But by and large, most of the currencies are pegged to the US, meaning they are fixed to the US. So we typically compare it with the US. But under the agreement, there are no provision for the use of the base currency, right? The retirement ages are different. So there are no harmonization. In Angola, you could retire at 65. In Guyana, you could retire at 60. Grenada now, their retirement age has changed. What we see in most Caribbean countries now, going to age 65 as their retirement age. And that is a step in the right direction. St. Kitts retirement age, for instance, is still 62, right? But most countries are heading to 65. The only country that is higher than 65 is Barbados. Barbados retirement age is at 67. And St. Kitts now is having pension reform discussion with the view of increasing the normal pension age, and the thinking of going to 65. The other element we must pay attention to is the early pension option, or the early retirement option. Am I allowed to retire early in these countries? Well, in Anguilla, I cannot retire early. Also similar in British Virgin Islands, Grenada, and Guyana, I cannot retire early. However, most of the other countries allow early retirement at age 60. So if I take my pension early as a migrant in St. Vincent, I have to wait 5 years before I receive that pension in Anguilla. So these are some of the differences in designs and the number of weeks, also very important to be entitled to a full pension, varies a bit, but most centered around 500. So there's a variation in terms of the weeks required for pension. And because there are variation in the weeks required for pension, there would be variation with regards to the pension percentage, meaning some schemes are designed where they are front-loaded. For instance, in St. Vincent, for the first 15 years you work, you're entitled to 2%. So the first 15 years, you get 2%. For each year there, after the first 15 years, you get 1%. So that's front-loading. You get a higher in the early years of 2% and a lower of 1%. And typically we see that design throughout the region. And the minimum pensions across the CARICOM space, there are minimum pensions. And we see minimum pensions varies across countries. We'd have the lowest minimum pension, roughly 112 US, and the maximum, and that is in St. Lucia, and the maximum pension you would have in Barbados, minimum pension is 527. So minimum pension you get in St. Lucia, 112 US, and the maximum you can get in Barbados is 527. So that gives you a snapshot on the variation in designs for the respective social security systems. It therefore means on the implementation of the CARICOM agreement on social security, there will be some difficulties or some inequity, and I will go to explain that. So let us look at a practical example. An insured person who does not qualify in any country. This insured person works in country A. The insured person contribute for eight years. The insured person also work in country B and contribute for 7 years. The insured person also work in country C and contribute 5 years. So the total contributions for that person is 20 years, right? So the qualifying condition in each country is 10 years. So it therefore means that this person work in 3 different countries and have not qualified for pension in any of the countries, right? So what we will do in terms of determining a benefit, we will totalize. So for instance, in country A, the person worked for 8 years. So you'll take 8 years over the 20-year work history and you calculate the benefit. So this person will get a partial pension from country A equivalent to 8 over 20. Similarly, they work in country B, they make 7 years contribution, they'll get 7 over 20 times the pension percentage. And then country C, they'll get 5 over 20 times the benefit. So there we totalize, right? So the key takeaway is the person will be entitled to a pension based on the totalization of the contribution. So the person work across 3 countries, total number of years 20, each country will pay a proportion. Without this CARICOM Social Security Agreement, these persons would have received a grant, a one-off payment from the 3 countries, a lump sum. So that person won't be protected against longevity risk. So the CARICOM Social Security Agreement protects you, right? And this is one of the fundamental financial benefits of the agreement. This shows you that a person's work in 3 different countries and the person did not meet the contribution required for pension in all 3 countries. However, because of the workings and the provisions of the CARICOM Reciprocal Agreement, this person was able to access a pension in income and income for life. So this is one of the key benefits of the reciprocal agreement. Let us look at another example, and this time the intro qualifies in all three countries: country A, country B, and country C. So the contribution made, for ease of reference, I use a single number 10. So in country A, the person worked for 10 years and the number of years required for pension is 10. So the person will be entitled to a pension, right? In country B, person worked for 10 years and the contribution requirement for pension is 10 years. So the person is qualified for pension in country B. And in country C, the person worked for 10 years and the contribution requirement is 10 years, so the person qualified. So what happened here is that the person now would receive 3 different pensions. So we would not, because the person is qualified in all 3 countries, then you don't apply the totalization. So once someone qualifies in a country meeting the contribution requirement, then you do not apply the totalization in this case, or the agreement does not apply. So because the person satisfied the number of years for pension in all 3 countries, we do not apply the totalization, or we do not apply the agreement. So what would happen is that this person, and we could use St. Vincent, if they work for 10 years, they'll be entitled to a pension of 30%. Grenada, similarly, they'll entitled to a pension of 30%. And Montserrat, pension of 30%. So that person would have a combined pension of 90%. So they work for 30 years. But because we do not apply the agreement, because they are qualified in the respective country, this person will receive a combined pension of 90%. But the maximum replacement rate in all 3 countries is 60%. So it therefore means that by moving under this agreement, then there's an excessive combined pension. And in this case, it's about 30% excessive. So this in itself is a design flaw. So whilst the person is protected here, the person ends up with an enhanced benefit relative to if that person stayed in St. Vincent and worked. If that person stayed in St. Vincent for the 30 years and worked, the pension percentage that person would have received would have been 45% if the person stayed in St. Vincent. But because the person stayed across 3 different territories and they met the qualifying condition for all 3 territories, then they will be paid individual pension. So there's an excess combined pension, and this is a design flaws of the agreement. Right. So how we typically operate the CARICOM Social Security Agreement in terms of how do we monitor the performance? So what we'll do, we'll collect data from respective countries, and we'd ask for quantitative data and qualitative data, because on an annual basis, we want to ensure that we improve on our service delivery to migrant workers in the Caribbean. So a country will send the total number of claims receives under the reciprocal agreement. They would also send the total number of claims that are outstanding. They will send the total number of claim files, because you typically file the claim to a respective country, the total number of claim paid, and the schematic presentation of countries' claims that were received. So each country will send this information to CARICOM Secretariat for us to monitor in terms of the activities or the volume of people who move and the amount of monies they receive. We would also document our experience of the qualitative side of things. We'll take issues of the challenges that we face that are affecting the process, what opportunities are there for improvement, and what resolution can be had. So the last survey we did was in 2022. We had a low compliance rate, meaning out of the 13 countries, we had submission by 8 countries. And we had some untimely submission of data. We had non-submission of data from 5. We had incomplete submission of data, and we have some inaccuracies and inconsistencies in completing forms. And this was because there are no standardized methods of collating data, right? So that lead to inadequacy and inconsistencies. So in performing the analysis of the results, the number of claims submission, Belize at the highest, was the highest, about 1,052. And this is significant in the Caribbean context. And total, Belize at 27, and Antigua at the most of 433. Antigua, small as it is, receive a lot of Caribbean national, and Belize received 27. In 2022, the number of claims that were processed total 1,052. The claims received in 2022 was 68, and we know some plans were challenged with regards to coming out of COVID, and the claims paid was 227. So that's the statistics in terms of the claim activity. But what are the practical challenges that we face in the implementation of this agreement, right? So we have design challenges. I showed a picture snapshot of the countries and the design. We have varying benefit formula, right? We have different accrual rate. I mentioned in St. Vincent, in the first 15 years, one entitled to 30%. However, in Grenada, one entitled to 30% after the first 10 years. So there are variation with regards to the accrual rate or the pension percentage per year, how much you're entitled to a year across countries. Also, the maximum percentage varies. Whilst most countries are at 60, we have countries like Antigua at 50. So the maximum pension percentage varies across country. So in terms of the benefit, and the reference wages also varies. So for instance, in Grenada, they use the 3 best years to calculate a pension. In St. Vincent, you use the 5 best years. So in terms of the benefit formula, varies across countries, and that also would impact processing, the benefit processing, and cause delays. There are variations with regards to benefit qualifying conditions. Retirement ages in different countries vary. Retirement ages in St. Vincent now is 63. In St. Kitts, it's 62. In Anguilla, it's 60. Right? And the number of contribution weeks required for pension or number of years of contribution required for a full pension varies across country. In the case of St. Vincent, it's 13. In the case of Anguilla, it's 10. Right? The base currency. St. Vincent, for instance, uses EC dollars. Barbados use the Bajan currency. Belizeans use the Belize currency. Bahamas use the Bahamian dollars. So there are different currency used across the CARICOM countries, and there's no normalization or establishment of a base currency. Typically, one would use for comparison purpose the US. With regards to administrative challenges, what are the administrative practical challenges we face? There are no standardized format for data exchanges, right? So what happened is that there are ad hoc basis and format in information requests. So that's an opportunity for improvement. And also the process accessing the data is largely manual and time consuming. We'd have to prepare, for instance, in St. Vincent, a request comes from St. Lucia for information of a St. Lucian who used to work in St. Vincent. What we'll do is provide the information in terms of their wage, contribution, and we pass that to St. Lucia. But it's a manual process, the exchange done via email. but consideration is being made to have this process digitized. Variance response time. We have no established mechanism for coordinating response time and benefit processing time. So we have to work on synchronizing the response time to our internal customers, meaning our respective social security systems. So these are the administrative challenges we face, and these are the design challenge. What's the roadmap in terms of where we're heading, right? There are some immediate design challenges that we can address. For instance, the CARICOM Social Security Agreement does not cover or does not apply in the country where the person qualifies. What we should do is apply totalization, irrespective of whether the insured person is qualified for pension or do not qualify for pension. We should apply the totalization principle. And by applying the totalization principle, it provides equity in terms of the payment to the beneficiary. Also, a comprehensive review for the relevance and applicability of this law. This was instituted in 1996. In 1999, there were other governments that signed on. And in 2002, we had all governments sign on. But given that there have been developments in the macro environment or in the contextual environment, then there's need for us to do a review of this agreement and determine relevance and applicability. And consideration must be given for varying currencies, different earnings, different ceilings, and different benefit rule. So this comprehensive review is required to enhance the coverage aspect of the program and also to try to harmonize the benefit rules across countries. Administratively, there are work to be done by us. For instance, we need to develop a data exchange mechanism. And the ISA, the International Social Security Association, aided some European countries to facilitate the data exchange. So it is our intention to engage ISA. We have a training in Grenada between May 6th and May 8th to discuss this agreement. And we could develop a data exchange mechanism and have ISA to give us guidance, technical assistance on the same. So it will make a seamless transfer of exchange of information between countries. And we should try as much as possible to digitalize data collection process and also improvement in response time and regular training. As mentioned, we have in this year training in Grenada between the 6th and the 8th of May. I'm encouraging all to participate in the training. It's going to be very practical of how we implement the CARICOM reciprocal agreement. And coverage extension is important. We will continue to target the members, Anguilla, the associate members, Anguilla, BVI, and TCI to join the program. As well, we're looking at broadening coverage to cover short-term benefit. So we met last November as heads or directors of social security system through the region. And we made a collective commitment to strengthen this CARICOM social security agreement because this is fundamental, this is essential in facilitating the free movement of labor with the view of driving economic growth. So here ends my scripted presentation. I stand ready to answer any questions. So that's my presentation on the CARICOM Social Security Agreement and the workings of the same. And as I said, this reciprocal agreement covers 13 contracting parties of independent countries. And we are liaising with Anguilla, BVI, and TCI to sign on to this agreement so that we can have a wider pool, because there are Caribbean nationals residing in BVI, Anguilla, and Turks and Caicos. And by and large, these persons would receive less than they would have had they stayed in the country that they emigrated from. For instance, we have a lot of Vincentians going to Turks and Caicos Island to be police, to be nurses. When they go over to Turks and Caicos Islands, then it's as if they starting over Social Security, start making contribution, because there's no reciprocal agreement between Turks and Caicos and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we are going to work relentlessly to bridge these gaps in the CARICOM Social Security Agreement, because we believe that is a fundamental and critical mechanism to facilitate the free movements of people and labor. So thank you very much. Ends my scripted presentation. So moderator, I turn to you.
Muchas gracias, Mr. Stewart. Muy interesante.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stuart Haynes. You're a wonderful keynote speaker, sir. We've discussed this in other venues. The portability of rights is a best practice that continental America has to learn from the CARICOM communities. You've expressed this, sir, and said it right. Thank you for sharing the roadmap you're heading. I have 3 questions queued for you, sir. I'm going to formulate them in Spanish so they can be translated to English. There's 4 questions. The first question, sir, they're asking us about the impact amidst the process of reform in the pension system for St. Vincent's and the Grenadines, the impact of that reform, about portability rights at CARICOM. We know that you're about to implement or enact the reform process, the amendment. The second question, which are the challenges, sir, that you're facing, financially speaking, when we speak about financial sustainability, because you're combining those pensions, right? There's a combination of benefits and percentages. The third question is, which were the main challenges or difficulties that you faced throughout the whole process that you just discussed about? Because you're harmonizing the legislative process in correlation with politics. And another question that we received via digital content, has the CARICOM, your community has signed off multilateral agreements with other economies, with other parties, third parties. You've strengthened this agreement, and it's functional, in its spirit in the community of the Caribbean. Have you thought about drafting another agreement to protect other beneficiaries so they don't lose their rights? And I succinctly explain, how does this convention or agreement impact St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Could you discuss the challenges and the difficulties and the agreement of the CARICOM, the impact of the CARICOM agreement in the region, sir? What do you have to say about this? Was it clear, sir?
All right. Yes, your question was very clear and very pertinent. Very, very good questions. I appreciate the questions. With regards to the reform of Social Security, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, reforming whilst ensuring that the migrants, CARICOM migrants' rights are preserved and protected. We do not compromise on preserving the Social Security rights of CARICOM nationals, including Vincentians. So when we do our reform to improve the financial sustainability of the system, we're doing that reform to benefit all contributors and all beneficiaries, right? With regards to the specific design now, so for instance, in St. Vincent, we reform and we say in the number of weeks required to qualify for pension now will move from 500 gradually to 750, right? That design isn't aligned, for instance, with the design of Grenada. Grenada still has 500. So because you have variation in this design, it definitely would impact the amount of benefit one would receive and also the timing of benefits. But when we reform, we look at the socio-economic realities of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I can say other countries that reform look at their own socio-economic experiences. And what they look at from way of this agreement is more so the whole issue of the members remain covered, right? But I think there are opportunities for improvement now for us in the reform conversation. Future now look at the alignment. Like coincidentally, there would be, I would say in the next 5 years, an alignment as it relates to the retirement age. Almost all of us is going to 65. But the drawback on that is that St. Vincent, for instance, offer an early retirement pension. But Montserrat, in their reform in 2022, remove early age pension. So you cannot retire early in Montserrat. So it means someone in St. Vincent who choose to retire at 60, take an early pension, that person now would have to wait until 65 to apply to Montserrat, right? So there are scope for improvement, coordination across this. But I can tell you in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines context, the early pension, and I will touch the second one, having that window of the early pension is actually creating sustainability challenges for St. Vincent. When we look at our design, the major driver of the benefit expenses was the early age pension. And you will think in the reform that we will adjust or eliminate the early age pension. Because what happened with the early age pension is that persons are taking the pension early, so the contribution period has shortened and we paying them for a longer period. So what we're seeing is that creating sustainability challenges. However, in the St. Vincent context, it would have been difficult for us to eliminate early age pension. And one of the main reasons is because the employers' retirement ages are not aligned with the pensionable age of the NIS. So for instance, NIS pensionable age today is 63. But if someone working with the government of St. Vincent, they retire at age 60. So therefore, if we cut out the early retirement, those persons that have no employer's pension would literally suffer or go into poverty because there's no source of pension. And we have in the St. Vincent context where 85% of our pensioners receive NIS as their only source of income in retirement. So therefore, we cannot remove that early age pension at this time until the government and other major employers align their retirement age with NIS St. Vincent pensionable age. If we have that alignment in the case of Montserrat, then what you can do, you can remove the early age pension. And St. Lucia, similar. In St. Lucia, the retirement age is aligned legally with the pensionable age. So St. Lucia can afford to say there's no early age pension because nobody will be retiring early and have no pension. All retirement ages are aligned with the pensionable age, right? So once we look at the sustainability of our system and what parameters, whether the contribution rate, whether the number of years required for pension, what we look at in the CARICOM agreement on social security is preserving these rights, the right to a benefit, but the amount can change as a result of reform. The amount can change for future beneficiaries, right? But we don't have where we engage in reform and we do alignment. There are discussion around in terms of our major parameters, how can we align? And also some practical difficulties with the implementation, right? Some of the difficulties we had is around communication, right? So whilst the spirit is there to protect and to maintain the rights of our citizens and the migrants, what we don't have is effective communication. There are communication gaps. And communication gaps will mean that there's delay in processing. So we'd have our constituents, our beneficiaries waiting longer. The other gap we have administratively is response time. So for instance, in St. Vincent, we will take like 6 days to process a pension. In Barbados, they will take 3 months. So you will find the person who will receive the pension in St. Vincent and have to wait longer in Barbados because the processing time is different. So we have that. Also, the data set. We need to uniform or standardize the data set. So the data set varies. So St. Vincent may send a data set template that is different to St. Lucia. And that could impact in terms of the timing of information. And we typically do these exchanges of data and information on a manual process. If we have, and I know ISA has worked with some European countries to have what we call a digital data exchange, that will certainly help with the exchange of information across countries. So these are some of the difficulties we've seen. But once we face difficulties, but also we look at solutions. So we will meet annually every year. The heads will meet at the heads of Social Security meeting, and the heads will provide the information, the performance of the agreement in the respective countries. And we'll come with fresh issues, existing issues that we face, and how we can resolve those issues. So it's a work in progress, and we design training. So for instance, in Grenada, there will be a training on May 6 to 8 to treat with the application of this agreement. And we're going to look at the different provisions to look at relevance and applicability. So it's always what we call a fluid process where we would upgrade and enhance as inner circumstances may dictate. So those are my responses to the well-articulated questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haynes. Thank you so much, sir, because in this venue, in this session, we were receiving more and more questions for you, sir, but we know it's not the last time we'll get to listen to you as a keynote speaker, sir. We know that we have the coordinator, Luz Angela. She's coordinating the commission's activities with sub-regions. Ms. Teresa Gonzalez, she's the legal department lead expert in this commission's endeavors. Oscar Guzman, he's also in coordination efforts. Let's keep in touch, sir. I'm being asked to be part of these sessions in the Social Security Week that's coming soon. We're working on harmonizing these agreements. You had to go through the transition process. You ratify the agreement to protect your Caribbean community in no more than 10 years, and the beneficiaries have suffered the impact, the benefits. On behalf of the General Secretariat, sir, we'd like to thank you for sharing your presentation today. We have a lot to learn from you. And it's an honor for us to have you as active members of this conference. So we're going to analyze future topics. We're going to strengthen the relations and ties. Let's work as allies. Thank you for being part of these sessions, this tight level dialogues. Thank you. Council, would you like to make announcements? Sir, I thank you, Stuart, Mr. Haynes, on behalf of the members of this conference. Truth of the matter is, when we heard you as a keynote speaker, we analyzed the lines of work all the development and all the commission's work, the subregion, the fourth subregion, the legal department, everyone's involved. Many stakeholders are part of these dialogues about right portability and the development of the proper mechanisms to be efficient, as you well mentioned, sir. So we're going to invite you to be part of in a future session so you can share your experience. Maybe you can discuss topics such as politics, the grounds of politics, the drafting and the wording of these important agreements, these conventions. Luz Angela and I, sir, will be contacting you soon so we can continue our development in these lines. Thank you, Mr. Haynes, for your
All
support.
right. Yeah, and thank you very much for your kind words. I mean, I stand ready, and I know the other members of the CARICOM stand ready to provide support to our sister institution to strengthen global social security. I mean, we do social security business in different geographical space, but we have a good working relationship, and we are committed to strengthening this working relationship, and we stand ready to provide support to our global community on social security matters. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Mr. Stewart. Y pues desde acá le
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Thank you. A round of applause for you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart Haynes. And we have 4 minutes. We're about to kick off the next panel about professional risks and work risks. So please stay tuned, stay with us, and briefly, we're going to resume. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Uno, dos, tres. Uno, dos, tres. Uno, dos, tres. Uno, dos, tres.
Lo escuchamos bien.
Saludos, Ayala, sí hice una prueba de audio. Saludos, Ayala, sí, prueba de audio.
Muchas gracias. Continuamos. Gracias a todas las personas.
Once
que nos-
again, we continue. Thanks to all those who are following the streaming via YouTube and all the public. And we know you're following us via Zoom and other platforms. We're going to begin at the second top level dialogue about health, labor risks, and professional labor risks. This is part of the sequence of conferences of the Commission of Labor-Related Risks, Health and Well-Being. This is an effort of its members, and we thank the chairs of both commissions who have joined this panel. Now the floor is open for Ms. Luz Angela Cardona Cunha, coordinator of examiners of the American commissions that work on Social Security matters. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you so much. This conversation about risks and labor risks, professional risks, gives us the room to discuss the matters with experts from Colombia, Peru, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and Mexico, amongst other economies. We're here to open up for dialogue to foster the improvement of what's happening in the labor entities. And we have divided this conversation into three branches. We will celebrate the opening ceremony thanks to the president of the Commission of Labor-Related Risks, Gil Montalvo. Then we're going to listen to the presentation of three cases. Based on that experience, we're going to discuss the core topics of these presentation. Each speaker will have 20 minutes. After that, we're going to have the next phase of dialogue. We will include other examiners to this debate or discussion to celebrate the opening of this sequence of dialogues. We introduce Ms. Gil Montalvo. She's a doctor, a general physician. She has a master's in public health, labor medicine, and labor risk prevention. She has a master's in engineering, a master's in assessment of like bodily harm, and she has been invited to participate to the session. She's an epidemiologist, and she's a founding member of the Dominican Association of Experts in Prevention. And currently, she's the post holder of the Superintendent's Office of Labor Risks at Dominican Republic. She's the chair of the American Commission of Labor Risks. Ms. Gil Montalvo, the floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you very much, Dr. Cardona, dearest keynote speakers, participants, general audience. The American Commission of Labor Risk Prevention is pleased and we're honored for being part of this high-level dialogues in which our topic of focus is the well-being of the workers. So we have to highlight and discuss the evolution and how we prevent risks at the workplace under the specific frame of management and health management as internal laws in different enterprises. We have these laws or bylaws to prevent diseases and risks that the workers face at the workplace. So we want our people to work and be healthy and happy. You know, we have to work with the best practices and best practices of many companies. Some companies are not in compliance with the mandates. We want to protect our people's mental health. Some companies foster a healthy lifestyle or work-life balance. And there's certain situations that happen at the workplace, and we prove that today there's many personal factors or situations that the worker has to face and other risks that we add to the situations at the workplace that can have an effect on the health and productivity of companies. Monitoring and surveilling the health of the individual workers or collective analysis is something that impacts not just what's happening at the workplace, but what happens in people's lives. We want to prevent, anticipate, and control the risks that people face at the workplace and improve the conditions of the people at work. So we need to constantly monitor what's happening, increasing the scope of our analysis to improve the psychosocial capacities of the workers. So with this new mission and vision, we want to even amend the law if need be, because there's the authorities which are regulators of what happens at the workplace. We want to strengthen the national councils that analyze and work for the workers' health and well-being in tripartite scenarios. But if we see the Dominican system or the systems of Social Security and other economies, not only of the situation of reference in my country, we are working on drafting the best public policies to protect our people and their social benefits. We analyze with feasibility studies and the proper budgeting the sustainability of our social security systems. So it is important for us to consider that there's room for improvement and broadening of the coverage in our scope. We need to know that there is a new list of pathologies, risk factors, or that risk matrix, and economic benefits that are awarded through a system that's in place. The KBRT is also part of what's happening here today. We want to support the member countries and continue supporting each other's, building international strategies so we can analyze the health of our workers. Specifically, we should analyze the plan of the WHO that was drafted since 2015 and 2025. The WHO instrument mandates us to update through our legislative process and analyze what's technical. We need to strengthen our systems, broaden the coverage of the social security benefits offered for the workers. We have to foster well-being of our people and strengthen the capacity that we all have to submit diagnostic information. The systems or the solutions used to generate information are top. We have to analyze any hazardous situations or risks or work incidents or deaths even at the workplace. So it's a calling for all of us. The WHO calls us to coordinate our efforts and develop the national health plans for workers in alignment with the public health care plans of each economy so we can be efficient enough and improve the health of our workers. We have to have the basic services being offered that's all integrated into the national plans of well-being. We must be capable of facilitating access to the workforce, whether they're regulated or not regulated subjects. We have to point out what's happening in a region. There's pendings in a region. We are trying to move forward and catalyze the development and strengthening of the academic offer to study what's happening, to really prevent risks. We have to develop technicians that could analyze labor risks so we can tackle emerging risks or new risks. These technicians could pay close attention to what's happening in our small and medium-sized enterprises or cumbersome companies that are part of what we have in our region. What could we do based on this? We have to participate and analyze those who are minorities and vulnerable, that are susceptible of being impacted. We know that there is a clear interest on working hard and working with the vulnerable collectives that are even affected by climate change. In general, right now is a time we have the opportunity to strengthen our administration of risks, given the fact that there's a lot happening at the workforce. There's new types or categories of workers in the workforce, and we're also going through a process of transition. The KPRT wishes you all the best. We're here to discuss opportunities, challenges, and to tackle the situations in the workforce. Health is inherent, and we have to protect the health of our workers, and we have to improve the situations of all the stakeholders involved. Thank you very much, Ms. Cardona. The floor is yours, ma'am. Ms. Gil Montalvo. Your words are the preamble to the intro to the core subjects that motivate us to be here today. So thank you for your kind words. I'd like to present Ana Carolina Galindo. She will present or discuss the risks at the workplace, and she's a rep from Colombia. Ms. Galindo is an attorney. She has a master's at law thanks to the University in Colombia. She has a master's in social studies. Thanks to the national university of her country, she has over 15 years of experience in the public sector. She's been a counsel to draft public policies and worked on transparency projects and plans and anti-corruption mechanisms. She's also been working with the Republic or government of the Republic of Colombia. She was part of the collegiate body that drafted one of the general acts, and she's a researcher as well. Ms. Galindo is also the post holder of the analysis of the Labor Ministry of Colombia. She's working on detecting risks. Ms. Galindo, the floor is yours. Thank you for being part of this event. Thank you all very much. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, we can. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to, first of all, greet you. I salute you all from the Colombia, from the Labor Ministry specifically, that's led by Gloria Inés Ramirez Rios. I'll tell you, she was the author of the law that was drafted, the law called 1562. It's the act or chapter 12 of our law that now is the law that we must follow to detect any risks at the workplace in Colombia. So I salute you all. We're amidst a change in this former administration led by the president or the executive, Mr. Petro, and the VP Matrix. Now, first, this is the intro to the core subject. I'll discuss the social security systems that enable us to work in an integration at a country level. Now, the general system that we use to detect risks at the workplace is what we have. I'll talk about the challenges that we must tackle and the challenges that we're facing this year amidst the implemented system that enables us to measure risks in our country. As I said at the beginning, the social security systems are integrated and created for our country, just like many other economies in LATAM. This system has an objective. We must guarantee the social security benefits, offer health and other complementary or enhanced services. We want to broaden the coverage of the system so everyone in the citizenship of this country has access to the integrated system for social security benefits. In this system, we have our guiding principles, our provisions, the principles of universality, solidarity, equity, participation, and other guiding principles. These are this is the bedrock, of it all in the healthcare system for us. Currently, there is a law being passed at Congress in a legislative process amidst the amendments that are about to be material in our system. We have a clear objective amidst the reform. We want to strengthen the first level of services being offered. We want to take a preventive stance before what's happening in the healthcare system. The current model has two regimes, two schemes. The contribution scheme is one type. The workers can pay the contributions in the regulated formal sector, and there's a subsidy type that's something that's offered to the rest of the population that cannot pay contributions or fees. So that's the respect of the principle of the rights being universal. In the pension scheme system, we also have escalated to the legislative process or the chambers of government that wants to go through the amendment process. We want to build strong pillars in this law or act. We have a strong system. There's two types of models, the solidarity regime or scheme for the payment of the premium fees or the contribution payments. And then we have the private scheme, that's the individual savings scheme with the principle of solidarity. These two types of models for pensions to happen here enable us to issue a pension only to 4 out of 5 workers in this country. So our pension scheme at a national level is not in compliance with the principle of it being universal. So we can't ensure that all who are aging will receive a pension at old age. So we have a system that currently is exercised. So we have a 3 million members or workers affiliated to this authority, and we can issue a pension for those who suffer a risk at the workplace or suffer an accident. I want to be very solid with my communication. So our general labor risk assessment leads us to create a system to protect our people from labor rights. This act was object of amendment. It's law 15 that in that general act for social security protection, in its chapters or in its wording, we specified or stipulated that all the beneficiaries are people that are working in a formal contract or a regulator concept. And there's public policies in place that are activated when the workers have signed up an agreement to lend their services. They have to be affiliated or members to the benefits of Social Security. It's mandatory to also include the independent or outsourced workers. There's other types or categories of workers that are stipulated in our law through the labor ministry. In this case, the members or affiliated subjects can pay and honor their fees as independent citizens. There's workers that could also affiliate themselves to the program that the government offers. Independent workers could also be on board. Regulated subjects or unregulated subjects who are working can be part of this government program. Some are temporary workers. And in that sense, the first point that I want to highlight is our general system or program from government that protects our 3 million affiliates. We protect 3 million. That's almost 42% of the working population. So this is happening because it's a phenomenon that has taken place in the region. There's a lot of subjects working which are not regulated subjects, and it makes it almost impossible for us to affiliate these unregulated subjects to the government program and generate relations through the signature when there's a labor contract in place. So there's many challenges that we're facing. The labor risk system or program has a provision to protect our people and offer them Social Security benefits. Our task is to protect the people, irrespective of the situation or the status of membership or affiliation. In our law, we have a Social Security system or a program for our people to be protected at their workplace. We've also created the categories of students that could be working while they're studying. You know, they could be working as in their internships, in their professional practice, and they're linked to the government program to protect them when they face any risk at the workplace. So students can also be benefited by going through the process of internship and being professionals in practice. And apart from this, or in addition to the aforementioned, we built a strong system that's based on the model to provide the insurance or to provide that coverage and safety. We have like the risk matrix or a risk matrix in correlation to the activities at the workplace, and there's 8 insurance entities that are private entities. We're the public entity. When the employer regulates or affiliates the workers or the payroll, the employer can elect which is the insurance entity that will protect the employer. And there's the beneficiaries can select the insurance entity. There are also entities that have a function to serve as counselors to the employers or companies. They can offer models or mechanisms to prevent any accident or incident from happening at the workplace. However, it's an obligation for the employer to implement or execute these protection measures. Now, the independent workers or the outsourced workers or freelancers can also obtain these benefits when they work on their own. The coverage of the protection in this workplace, is active once the member is affiliated, once the subject is affiliated. It's in exercised or enforced next day after the registry of the person. It facilitates our tasks because the insurance entity ensures that the conditions at the workplace of the worker are the proper ones. In our labor risk system or in this program, we have a matrix to measure the risks or the risk matrix that determines the amount of that the members or affiliated subjects could receive. The type of risk is classified. There's different types. We rank them. The risk matrix involves 5 types of risks. The minimum risk is considered level 1. High risk is level 5, and it's correlated to the subject's membership or affiliation. Risk 2 is a low-level risk. 3 is a mid-level risk. 4 and 5 are maximum risks or high-level risks. As I told you from the beginning, some independent workers have a mandate. The employers have to be affiliated to Social Security programs when they're executing tasks which are classified as level 4 or 5, which are high risks. Now, in our efforts, we have leaders, and the public policies that are drafted to tackle those risks at the workplace are part of the package of documents that are received by the Ministry of Labor and the Labor Risk Unit. In my department, we have an economic budget, a budget that's allocated to support all the measures in place to continue our creation of public policies. So this funds or this budget is used, it's a 1%.
¿verdad? Y pues el Departamento de Prestaciones Sociales, que es el que se encarga de esta oferta programática, cuenta con un equipo multidisciplinario. Tenemos dentro de las disciplinas lo que es psicología, la enfermería de salud mental, trabajo social, nutrición y fisioterapia. Contamos con un equipo de 10 personas que trabaja en esta oferta. Las actividades que realizamos para lo que es la parte de la promoción de salud mental incluyen talleres, charlas, foros, capacitaciones y congresos. Importante apuntar que nosotros esto lo desarrollamos en una doble modalidad. Tenemos todo lo que es la parte presencial, en la que nos dirigimos a todas las sedes que tenemos en el país. Nuestras sedes son todos los centros educativos que podamos encontrar. Entonces, abarcamos toda el territorio nacional. Y además de eso, pues tenemos también una oferta virtualizada en donde tenemos a través de distintas plataformas, distintas formas también de llegar a nuestra población con este tipo de actividades, ¿verdad? También lo que son actividades recreativas que han venido también tomando bastante importancia, son parte de las dinámicas o las estrategias que estamos utilizando para llevar las temáticas de la parte preventiva y de promoción de salud mental desde un enfoque lúdico, que es precisamente el que estas personas pues también nos han venido solicitando con mayor frecuencia. También realizamos campañas de promoción de salud en distintos medios digitales. De aquí se derivan campañas de promoción de la salud mental, específicamente enfocada en el tema de priorizarse como seres humanos, de priorizar el autocuidado y de buscar que el entorno laboral no se convierta en una situación que a futuro me provoque más bien carencias y que me lleve a tener un envejecimiento poco saludable. También tenemos algunos programas específicos que van enfocados también
And protect myself and protect my health. I mean, there's so many programs and it's so dynamic. We have that list of programs that I've mentioned. We're including trainings to be economically healthy. We have other programs to train people to understand how they're going to retire. We have a lifetime program to understand that people need to be trained to see how they can focus on their work first, but they must also think about long-term projects, and when they reach retirement age and pension schemes. So we have entrepreneurial programs that make it possible for the pension beneficiary to develop themselves in other skill sets and other trades. We have programs that are offered in education institutions. We want our people to take care of their health, have physical activity. They must train themselves to know how they're going to be psychologically sound and healthy. We offer appointments or advice and counsel with the people that take part of these programs. We have developed some research programs as well that lead us to be deterministic. We, through research, can determine the profiles of our citizens. We can identify the epidemics that our citizens suffer. We can develop a risk matrix. They can belong to the union of professors and teachers or not, but we've developed strategies that are innovation that can enable us to adapt to change. It's important. I mean, we live in this era, and the needs depend and change depending on the era we live in. Today, our needs are different if we compare the needs that we had 15 years ago when we started our research programs. Now, we also have a way of tackling cases of emotional crisis. With this emotional crisis program, we're like the first instance of contact for our members. So we reference them to another entity that or with other stakeholders that are part of our list of allies. They're allies or entities that work in the public and private field. But public services are difficult to create. So we have the private services so our people can really tackle any situation that they're suffering if they're suffering of a mental illness. Here we have a list of institutions with whom we have created these partnerships. It's interinstitutional efforts. It's a collective effort. We build our strategies with them. And as an institution, we have our limits. We have our internal laws and we have a mandate, and we build these partnerships to interact with other agencies, institutions, or bodies, whether they're public or private. With these other entities, we work together to build ourselves stronger based on these programs and strategies, which could be called of broader scope and coverage because our efforts are institutional. Here you see some pictures of the chats, workshops, of the activities that we've had, the activities that I've already mentioned to you all. This is what I've explained before. We go to the venues where we have our members, we go to institutions, we go to schools, we go to sports events, we offer to our members all of these programs so they feel that we're close to them. We're trying to eliminate their aches and pains. Our institutions are not just institutions that have to go through their internal decision-making process. We're institutions that understand the risks and the situations our members are going through. We contact them. We're there as a supporting body or entity. We propose the programs to these members, to these citizens, and we take them hand in hand through the programs. We want these citizens to express their wants and needs. And as part of what we're doing to face the challenges and tackle them, whatever we detect as a challenge in our institutions, we find the list here. What's factual is that in Costa Rica, there's the Social Security authorities, the ministries of public education. These authorities should consider that prevention is of utmost importance to protect our people's well-being. The traditional focus is just, okay, when the person's suffering a condition or an illness, then it's not prevention, as we're trying to find a solution to the problem. We want to work on strengthening our prevention programs, build those strong bedrocks so our people can really contact a mental health system with their proper development and analysis. We have to broaden the scope of a study to prevent and invest in health, to prevent the situations from happening. The decision-making process and those who are in the decision-making level, They must understand that we have to work to prevent and we have to improve to prevent. When our population improves and our people's or the citizenship's lifespan increases, we have to offer the best services and programs available to improve the quality of their life. We want to prevent and stop these diseases and illnesses to impact our population tremendously. So we have the guiding axis and the mechanisms to prevent and build that health. It's complex though. Our societies, our citizenships have become a bit more complex. When we analyze the societies and the psychology behind our society's actions, it all impacts our people's mental health. So we have to build our citizens strong. We have to allocate budget and mental health in different stages of our lifespan. We must not only focus on mental health issues because that's extremely important. Mental health is part of it. We have to correlate mental health to other illnesses. And sometimes we don't see how to build our people's self love and self esteem. How do we build our citizenship's life in that lifespan? It's very important for us to drive forward our research and investigation to determine which are the best practices, evidence based, but best practices that's focused. And we need to really try to find a way to satisfy the subject's needs. What they mentioned, we are here to guarantee that we have the necessary resources to have the programs which are priority and prevent. Everything should have that coverage. We have to, really work for our people's well-being. Many of our people's decision or the decision makers base their decisions just on numbers. They don't see the direct needs of the majority of our population. When there's budget cutback in any sector, when you cut back budget, you can have a negative impact and generate future expenditures in your government budgeting. So let's prevent. Thank you very much for your full attention. That was a clear focus and what we want to work on and contribute with from JUPEMA, our institution. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Muñoz Campos. Thank you for sharing your presentation. Now we're going to continue to the third part of this high dialogues or this conversations. The second or the third phase of this sequence of conferences enabled us to invite 5 experts or examiners that are going to be joining us at this table. So I'll present them to you. So please activate your cameras when I present you all to our public. The first examiner is Professor Rados Laboba. She has a license in law and social security and health at the workplace. She has a lot of experience in the legislative process and creation or drafting the law in the labor ministry. She's a counsel for 5 countries in the region. She has developed technical tools for the region, including the toolkit to support the creation of laws and regulations to protect our people at the workplace. She has played a crucial role when drafting or creating databases at a global scale in correlation to the subject. Rados Laboba, our professor, our doctor, has been working with many agencies and drafting strategies to be in compliance with the labor laws. She, as a doctor, has a position. She's a post holder for LATAM in the Caribbean with an agency based at Lima, Peru. Thank you, Professor. We have the presence of Dr. Jesus Ferris Iglesias. Thank you, Doctor, for activating your camera. So thank you for presenting your information before this panel. Mr. Ferris Iglesias is a doctor. Thanks to the Santo Domingo University, he has postgrad studies at Miami, Florida University. He has accreditations in pediatrics in the Mexican Pediatrics Hospital. He's a member of the National Autonomous University of the country. He has taken different positions or awarded many positions in the Children's Hospital called Robert Ray Cabral, where he created the first unit of intensive care units for minors and children. He is a superintendent or post holder of the Department of Labor Risks at the Dominican University. Thank you. We have the presence of Alessandro Pereira. He has a degree through Ensino Superior of Brasilia. He studied at the Bahia University. He was a parliamentary advisor or counsel at the chamber for over 20 years. He was part of the surveillance commission in the field of health at El Salvador from Bahia. He was the parliament's advisors in the Chamber of Deputies, and he's been an attorney, a practicing attorney with his license in many courts. He's been working in the Ministry of Health and of Social Security of the Ministry of Brazil. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Doctor. Now, from Peru, we have the presence of Aaron Mejia, who's a surgeon, a doctor, and his expertise is social security and environment. He's an auditor in the medical field and a quality auditor. He is also executing his duties in the different departments of the Ministry of Social Security at Peru. He has worked on executing programs in management systems and operation at a local and federal level. He's been working with the ministries to improve our people's health at the workplace. Thank you, Dr. Mejia. We also have the presence of Dr. Eric Humberto Pereira Torres. He has a bachelor's in education and a degree in different cycles. He's a professor in computer science and administrator through UNET University, a member of the collegiate body called JUPEMA in Colombia, and he has been in his position for many years. He has been in many positions in the National Association of Educators, professors of different levels. He is a national He's been working in MAFRE since 2012 till 2020. He's a union leader and a social activist. He's been working and exercising his license with the collegiate bodies of the National Educators Union. He's been working at JUPEMA too, and he's the elected VP of the directive board of the Pension Fund Savings Unit, or the administrator of the funds. Now, I'd like to thank all our keynote speakers who have shared their presentations. Thank you, Dr. Diana, very much for this phase of debate. If you want to join us, please go ahead and do so. I want to explain the dynamism of this third block of conferences. We have 3 rounds of Q&As, and for round by round, in each round, I'll formulate one question. 2 examiners will take the floor to give us an immediate response. After, 2 more examiners can, explain their opinions, their grounds, or arguments. You're going to have up to 2 minutes to express your comments, and I'll be the moderator and be capable of interrupting your participations after having quantified 40 seconds. We're going to go through 3 rounds of questions that will be formulated to you all, and there is going to be a list of questions that will enable us to be thorough about the core subjects of this debate or discussion. If you're already in set, the floor is open, and I'll formulate the first question. First question, what's the scope or coverage, and how is it possible or feasible for us to protect our people's health, the workers' health, with a clear focus in which we're trying to protect their labor risks they're running and their professional risks that they're running. So the question has been formulated, and we're open. Which of you examiners would like to take the floor and answer? Well, analyzing the concept, what's conceptual, we see the evolution, and we've observed that the worker has to be observed in all its facets, or as an entity, the worker's health is not necessarily correlatable to work, but the subject's health could be affected or impacted, and that the worker's health can impact the productivity of a company, of an enterprise. Currently, what must be done is protect. We have to foster, protect, and examine the individual's health and the collective health, the health of the collective. So we need to strengthen our laws and regulations, our provisions of the laws that lead us to know what we have to do. We have to coordinate our efforts between ministries of labor, ministries of health, to create joint programs, government programs that lead us to be aware of health and the well-being of the workers at the workplace. We have to stimulate the participation of these stakeholders in tripartite. We have to work with boards, national boards, to see how health is built if we're occupied. We have to be very specific and analyze the situation of each economy. We have to foster and enable the health to be taken care of at the workplace. We have to promote and build people with strong mental health, as our Costa Rican counterpart just mentioned. We have to build a healthy lifestyle of our individuals. I can't hear. I can't. Dr. Ferris, thank you for your comments, sir. The question and the floor is open for another examiner or expert in the topic that want to discuss the answer about how to protect our peoples, our at the workplace. Of course, Mr. Pereira, the floor is yours, sir. Precisely that. I'm interested on what Mr. Jesus Ferris said. In reality, in our case, we are absolutely working to protect the workers' rights. Absolutely. That's why today we've been appointed to a position in our structure in the Ministry of Health at Costa Rica. I've been appointed in my position as a post holder. So I just want to be brief. I want to tell you, I mean, there's the involvement of the unions of professors, the SEC, Landy, and GAPS, and other units and other bodies, are entities that we have relations with, as well as other universities, as what Juan Pablo said. The pension associations are also involved as stakeholders, as counterparts. In our case, what we have done under the conventions, we have been working with the collective authorities of Costa Rica. We have a convention that's upheld as law. It's a convention in Costa Rica, and it mandates us to prevent the physical, chemical hazards, ergonomic risks that our people or workers could be facing at the workplace. IME has a representative office in the ministry, and this department has to constitute commissions that analyze our people's health at a local level. We have these commissions constituted in different boards with professors, and along with the administration, we have these commissions and the convention, or this law that frames our actions. Being institutional, our mandate is to react, execute our mandate in compliance with the programs that have been built, as Juan Pablo said. We are here leading these efforts and communicating these programs with our professionals. We must promote the use of best practices, healthy practices in our collective, in the communities, with the institutions of the state, with the institutions of government. We're working on improving and creating the best paths for our subjects, regulated subjects, or affiliated members to protect their health at the workplace and away from the workplace as well. Thank you very much, Professor Pereira. Ms. Rados Ladova, our Professor Rados Ladova, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I would like to, first of all, I'll keep my stopwatch active. I understand I only have 2 minutes to participate. I want to comment, and my arguments are the following. Based on what the previous keynote speakers or examiners said, I'll tell you that the grounds from the ILO perspective leads me to speak about the scope and the grounds. There's the conventions, the 155 convention or agreement that guides our actions because it has the content of the health of our workers, and Convention 187. This other instrument is a guiding instrument to protect our workers at the workplace. These instruments are conventions that have been ratified and they've been drafted and finished in 2022. These conventions frame our actions. So basically, our actions are based on what we call the National Healthcare System or plan. And these plans are contain the different elements and mention the authorities and bodies that are necessary and must be part of the infrastructure to build our grounds or bedrock strong. We need to adopt government or governance instruments. The legislations have been mentioned. The general laws have been mentioned. We need to create public policies and correlatable programs to administrate our people's health at a national scale so we can really progress and meet the needs for the workers. The country's jobs are there. We need to create diagnostic data and the proper profiles to measure health country by country. Based on these outputs, we can build and draft other governance instruments and other government policies and legislate. So these legislations or frames could be adapted or object of amendment to meet and understand each country's needs to eliminate the gaps or loops. Thank you very much. The second question. The second question leads me to analyze the other side of the spectrum with a different focus. The Colombian counterparts shared their prevention programs, the work-related prevention programs. The Mexican experience was focused on the programs of integrated health, and the JUPEMA representatives focused their participation on mental health. So from your side as examiners, we'd like to hear from your side, which are the challenges that you face? Not only understanding that you're protecting our people from running any risks at the workplace, but how could we holistically and totally analyze our subjects' health? With those two spectacles or visions, tell us what you have to say. The floor is open for the examiners to participate at this panel. Who would like to take the floor to answer the question? Dr. Jesus Ferris Iglesias, sir, you have 2 minutes to respond. We know that approximately 4% of the GDP or the gross domestic product at global scale is lost. That 4% is lost because we have to use the budget to improve our people's health or tackle their ailments. So we have to really take a position in which we can prevent to build that health. We have to create or build room for dialogue in a tripartite scenario, or we need to invite the stakeholders that we need to invite. We need to broaden the coverage and offer a greater list of programs and services and benefits so we can build that health. We must consider the recommendations of the World Health Organization or WHO. We must include the basic services that are being offered in the primary levels of service for the beneficiaries. We have to increase the coverage level and have easy access for the beneficiaries to contact us and have access to the programs. We need to improve our diagnostic capacities or capabilities. We have to be capable of measuring epidemics. We have to properly continue monitoring and surveilling what's happening at the workplace in a continuous cycle for that continuous improvement. We need to clearly broaden the coverage and make it universal to include that level of protection to avoid our people from facing labor risks. And we must build a strong citizenship. That's general. Thank you, Dr. Ferris. I don't know if somebody would like to take the floor. Yes, Dr. Munoz Campos, please. Yes, I believe that we must consider, the core topic is scope, coverage, possibilities, feasibilities, as Dr. Ferris just said, as Jose Luis said. We need to build a strong culture in our citizenship. We can build a strong culture by using all the digital means available, all the channels available, what we currently have. We know that the pandemic taught us that there's other channels and means that make it feasible. That's why it's important for us to work on building public and private partnerships. We must build strong ties, become allies. We need to raise awareness, be very mindful about the aging process. We're not getting any younger. We're growing old. We have to understand that aging is part of it. As I told you a moment ago, our citizenship's lifespan is growing. we live longer. We need to know which are the needs of the elderly, but think about being a senior, part of the elderly of the population with the right programs and needs that need to be satisfied. It's relevant to take care of ourselves in advance. It's very important to take our hands on and protect ourselves and have a massive impact. We need programs that train the masses to have a major impact. Thank you so much. Would somebody else like to be part of the answer? Professor Ratoslavova. I would like to also participate and express my comments in correlation to what Dr. Ferris just announced. And in fact, I think it's extremely important or crucial to see the role that the health ministries or authorities play. I mean, we have to build those partnerships or allies. You know, we need to incorporate or add and see what we have to do at service level, you know, in the medical field. I want to mention that during my participation, I mean, the WHO drives forward the constitution of a collegiate body along with the ILO or the International Labor Association. In 2023, there was a debate with this collegiate body. And in that debate, the results were that what would be ideal is for us to continue progressing. The ILO has signed up has an agreement or a convention about occupation and services. It's agreement convention 161. It's that guiding instrument. That's the support instrument. It's the grounds. So if we read it, we can achieve giving our integrated services to build health. We can use this law to create a program with multidisciplinary groups in different economies and at the workplace. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to stress on another point and formulate a question. I want to ask you about what Ms. Graciela Gil Montalvo said at the beginning of our presentation. Gil Montalvo talked about the new challenges that we're all facing when we analyze the risks as professionals. Which are the new risks that we're all facing as pros? What do we have to do to protect our professionals at the workplace? There's some comments formulated by Dr. Galindo, but let's be thorough about these points. Let's communicate this to the public. Which are the populations that we're analyzing that generate a major challenge? Which are the conditions that these segments of the population or the demographics are following? Or, I mean, which are the challenges in this thorough analysis, Professor Alessandro?
Primeiro, eu quero agradecer ao seu Álvaro Velar, em nome do ministro da Previdência Social do Brasil, Carlos Lupe, pelo esse convite do Brasil estar participando desse fórum importante. Nessa questão de proteção e saúde, nessa questão de proteção e saúde do trabalhador, nós no Brasil atuamos com dois mecanismos principais. Que é o fator acidentário de prevenção.
Two main mechanisms. One that has to do with the work-related accidents that we're using. Another one that has to do with the situation of the epidemics that we're all facing in a correlation. I mean, we correlate the situations. We see the work-related accidents. There's studies that substantiate which are the grounds that enable us to have a safe place to operate. We need to have the right conditions at the workplace for the workers.
Muchísimas gracias, maestro Alessandro. Quizás pudiera profundizar en algún punto sobre cuáles son esas poblaciones.
There's many points. We have to see what's happening with the members of the population. There's many members of our populations which are vulnerable that pose a challenge. Do you see or observe more?
Então, o grande desafio hoje que nós enfrentamos no Brasil, já que a Previdência Social no Brasil, ela hoje é responsável pelo pagamento de algum benefício social a 38 milhões.
So we're all responsible. So there's support with these mechanisms, and we have created the environments that are safer for the workers to do what they have to do to improve their work environment so they don't feel insecure. The current government, Lula, guarantees that the workers are not facing a situation in which they have physical or mental issues or they simply don't have a job. That's why we want to have the proper mechanisms to ensure that the workers do have a job in the proper conditions and with safety. Along the same lines, Professor Errol Pereira, and then we're going to listen to Jesus.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Pienso que estos
Well, I believe that these challenges don't have, these challenges have to do with the demographics. I mean, our populations.
hay poblaciones, digamos, más
The demographics, it's due to the populations, there's samples of the demographics that are more susceptible to facing issues. There's some samples of the universe of our populations that might be facing mixed conditions. We have to analyze what's happening in the public and private sectors, in our countries. Nowadays, there's populations, our populations are growing, they're all aging and they require services. Our elders need services and they don't always have the programs and the institutions nor the mechanisms to provide services to these groups of the population. A moment ago, I was talking about the benefits or the positive sides or the positive elements of what we're doing in this coordinated effort with unions, government officials, government authorities, and other bodies. We're building dialogues with the employers as well as a stakeholder, but there's gaps in the system. We don't have the full attention. There's cutbacks in budget for government programs that through which we could provide attention and services. So for the elderly here, I think it's very important to drive forward and catalyze what we're doing in all the levels. In this instance, these dialogues or these sequence of conferences enable us to open up and listen to what the needs are in public policies, what we're going to draft. You see the data, the specific data that you just mentioned. If we don't have reliable data, hard data, then we have to reanalyze things to recreate our programs and coordinate our efforts and budget the programs, exercise the budget, and build programs for the elderly, for the retirees. We're working along these lines, and we're preparing ourselves, as Juan Pablo said. That's part of the challenges. That's part of the challenges that many LATAM countries face. We need to get our act together. We need to prepare ourselves and be active to face those latter stages of life. So we have to ensure that we're moving forward and those people who have access to their pensions have a top quality condition, top quality. That's what I wanted to formulate. I don't want to consume more time from the rest of the examiners or stakeholders involved today. The idea that you have about think about health, think about your health in long-term health. I mean, your population will grow and age, but the health of the worker has to be protected, not only because of the present situation of their health. I mean, you think about your health in the future. It's extremely important what you've just said, sir, Mr. Errol. Now, Professor Doslavova. Dr. Ferris Iglesias, I believe it was you, sir. I thought you had raised your hand before me. I think it was Dr. Ferris Iglesias first before. So, yes, when we are discussing the major challenges that we're facing, we're trying to protect our citizens' health. We always think about small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. Enterprises. However, there's regulations that should be adapted and adopted by small and medium-sized enterprises, not just the global companies, those moral entities, but it depends on the realities of the situations, the specifics of each country in the region. There's workers that work on their own, that are in freelancing or outsourced. There's members or regulated subjects that are regulated subjects. There's people that work out in the farmland, and there's people and subjects that have been affected by climate change. There's so much happening. We have to develop our people's skill set, traits to assess, evaluate, and correct, and detect the perils and the dangers that the people can face at the workplace. We have to draft joint programs between the Ministry of Law and the Ministry of Labor. We have to draft initiatives that enable us to work and build the health of the workers. We need to improve the capacity that our members have to access the benefits and services. We have to prevent and have prevention programs installed in the companies. Now, there's percentages. Out of 100%, we have 5% of the risk administrators or the entities that work as risk administrators in health. They have to work to protect and prevent and protect our people's health. These actions have to be supervised and monitored by the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Health. As such, we need to work on stimulating the growth and the impact or the scope of the prevention mechanisms that we have at a corporate level. We need to create and disseminate the academic offer to, issue accreditations and train our people to think about safety, health, hygiene, society and health, the academics, the scholars or the programs. We all have to really promote that these other resources are part of the kit that are available to develop our human capital. There's occupation programs or in the first tier or first level of services that are offered for our people so they can preserve their health. We have to train and create programs for the regulated subjects, members or not members as well. We have to build strong programs that are offered for social security purposes. We have to analyze what the vulnerable groups of our demographics have. We have to see what's happening with the professionals. And Dr. Ferris, thank you so much, sir. You just touched upon some points. We need to work with a collegiate body. And I profit from the opportunity I have to remind our audience that during the 6th and 7th of May, we're going to have an international conference about labor-related issues. We're going to have specific examiners being invited and called during that 6th and 7th of May. Just a reminder, because we're going to have that sequence of conferences, a congress. Now the floor is open for Ms. Radoslavova. Thank you, Dr. Ferris Iglesias. Yes, I couldn't agree more with what the comments are. I mean, Dr. Ferris, Mr. Errol Humberto Pereira, all of your comments. Thank you for contributing. And I want to comment to enhance our capacities. We know that there's demographic changes. The citizens are changing. We're going to see more of our population as elders. They're aging and they're part of the workforce. There's other elements to consider. We have to discuss new technology, IT, and the work of different platforms or different entities that have been used more amidst the pandemic. Now, there's a lot of matters or topics of debate. We need to impose governance and regulate what's happening with the workers or delivery service workers that are using specific third-party platforms. How are we going to protect them? There's new perils, dangers when there's new platforms and technologies being used. There's questions being raised constantly regarding the issue of privacy. How are these apps or technologies being used and they affect the subject's privacy and impact negatively the rights and the benefits of the workers? Climate change is also a topic. There's thermal stress taking place as we speak, and there's other weather and meteorological conditions that take this planet to extremes. How can we manage? How can we administrate and tackle climate change and analyze how it impacts the workplace, the workers who are out in the field, in the farmland, in rural zones? Our people are exposed to climate change, to those risks that are being felt simultaneously because of global warming. There's also psychosocial risks that our populations face. And that's part of what we're analyzing. There's first levels, second levels. I don't have the numbers of the WHO or World Health Organization, but apart from the pandemic, what happened after the pandemic, we have to analyze what's happening to our population or sample of the demographics in the field of mental health. And this is a new cycle. We have to analyze how we can continue growing and measuring the risks there, because these risks are there. And they cannot just be overlooked. They have to be observed. And as it's been said by Dr. Ferris, when we analyze all of the broad spectrum and the types of companies that we have to work with and regulate, we're facing issues or challenges with SMEs or small and medium-sized enterprises that were sometimes not even regulated, that they're part of the corporate enterprises, that layer of society. There's the macro companies, micro companies, or small and medium-sized ones, and there's production to be measured. Small and medium-sized companies have less structure, less budget. Let's say that they have less capacity, etc. That's why it's so important for the public sector to understand what we can do and how we can really impact the collective with the right programs and creations. As Dr. Ferris Iglesias said, and I love the fact that he touched this point, I believe Dr. Ferris mentioned companies with our insurance companies to protect the workers when they're having or suffering a condition that's sourced from the workplace. So these companies have the financing capacity and there's companies that can invest on prevention. Taking prevention precautionary measures really pays off in that future, but it's not just to prevent. There's other allies or institutions that can help us. Collegiate bodies, councils of workers, unions, and other stakeholders that could really impact the collective. We have to build a bridge with them. So at the end of it all, I have to be mindful. All of these layers have to be analyzed in all the sectors. There's a matrix of risk linked to mining, to construction, to agriculture development and farmland. So SMEs are working, there's independent unregulated subjects, the demographics and vulnerable segments of the vulnerable members of our societies are impacted, and it's been said. So, ma'am, Miss Diana Carolina Galindo from Colombia also mentioned that. So thank you all very much, Professor. Thank you, Mr. Errol. The floor is yours. It'll take you 2 minutes, and we're going to formulate the next question, of course. And pardon if I didn't go to the next question, but the clear focus of Ms. Radoslavova, she's part of the ILO, or International Labor Organization. I see that she has a global understanding of things. Technology is an issue. It's a core subject. Technology gives us room for research. It's a major field. IT deserves research. And with it, we can visualize, with this research, we can visualize the use of technology and the generation of technologies in a post-pandemic context. There's telework that's regulated. There's a new dimension for all our institutions, whether they're public or private institutions or entities. Truth of the matter is that all of this has triggered the analysis of other risks. The analysis of risks or not. The health of our workers is at risk. In our societies at a LATAM level, we must see what's the impact, for example, that women suffer at their household because they might be the ones that work at home. Women work at home and at work. So in many of the cases, I consider that there's simultaneous labor being executed by women at the workplace and the workforce. When women are working for a company and working at the household, it's very difficult to measure what's happening because of macho attitudes or misogynistic postures. We have to be very thorough when we analyze the role of women in our societies. So the burden of work is double for women. Women play a double role. They duplicate their efforts because they are working at telework from home and at home, and that impacts the health of our women. But I also wanted to reference or touch another case that the doctor mentioned. The unregulated subjects or the informal workforce. The unregulated subjects need to be insured and covered also. In Costa Rica and in other countries, I imagined in the region of the world, after the pandemic and amidst the pandemic, we see that unregulated work or services are being offered, and it's not regulated. So the governments post-pandemic have to tackle those challenges or the situations to build social security benefits for those unregulated subjects without affecting them negatively or mistreating them, because there's contributions and there's government budget and fees to be paid. And when the subjects are not regulated, they should be regulated so they could receive those benefits, but they're prone. But these subjects which are not regulated, they could be objectified. They could just be seen as an object or an entity, but they deserve, even if they're unregulated, to receive the benefits of Social Security. And sorry for taking more time, but I wanted to touch those two subjects that I consider are interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Errol Pereira. Now the floor is open for Professor Alessandro Lordelo from Brazil.
Para complementar aí o gancho que o Dr. Humberto.
Yes, just to adhere myself to the comments of Dr. Humberto and what he has said in the informal, unregulated um, with unregulated workers at Brazil, with the second administration of the former executive branch, Mr. Lula da Silva. Right now, what we're doing at Brazil is we have a general act, a law that guarantees social security benefits. As a prevention mechanisms, we offer social security benefits for the subjects which are not regulated or affiliated. They pay 5% of the minimum wage under this type, that's $190. So with this payment, we can guarantee to those unregulated subjects that are selling objects in the street that they're going to receive that support or social security benefit by paying this amount, and they are going to be guaranteed a pension with a minimum wage, with the thresholds at Brazil. That marked an enormous difference because we're protecting those who are unregulated in case they suffer an accident. People that don't have a fixed income could be part of this government scheme, and Brazil has worked a lot to achieve this. The Ministry of Labor at Brazil has worked on building those social security programs with Dr. Carlos, and what we have observed regarding the federal services offered in the medical field at a federal level, our workers and what we've created enables us to be in a better position. There's people that are working in under certain thresholds, under the levels of tolerance. We kicked off a study and identified what was happening at the workplace with other entities. So we see what's happening at the workplace, incidents that are toxic, incidents that are dangerous for the workers, and with the ministries of labor and the ministries of health, we're working together to protect the workers at the workplace so they have the proper protection gear in different lines of production. When the sounds or decibels, the sound levels are too high, which the levels of noise was toned down to reduce the negative impact on our workers. So let's listen to the last question of the panel just to celebrate the closure. And you, Mr. Alessandro Lordelo, you're talking about the mechanisms that have been effective. Which are the programs or mechanisms that have been effective? So you are in compliance with your mandates in the field or realm of health and prevention. So the rest of the economies that have joined this session want to hear you say what's happening in your country. We have members and counterparts of Costa Rica, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, amongst others. So we'd like you to tell us, Sir Alessandro Lordero, with your comments about which are the experiences that you've accrued. We want to listen also to Ms. Radoslavova, who is knowledgeable about what's happening at a regional scale. We want to make sure that we listen to your comments in the closure of this panel. What can we do to improve the coverage and protect our workers in all our countries? Thank you, Ferris Iglesias. The floor is yours, sir. Sir, your microphone is muted. It's deactivated. Currently, the budget that we have been awarded from the sir, we can't hear you. Let me see. I think we can hear you loud and clear, sir. So Currently, we just passed or approved that 1% of the total of what's accumulated or accrued, that 1% of that budget leads us to use that 1% to foster and continue strengthening our protection to so with the ministry in labor ministries and the work ministries and in the Department of Labor Risk Assessment, we have to see how we can work on protecting the subjects that are not regulated or are in zones that are farms. I mean, many workers are in rural zones, going from farm to farm. There's construction workers that are not regulated subjects that are building our buildings and skyscrapers that are highly movable, but we have a lot of experience. There's a lot of people that we've worked with, the banana gatherers in the region in my country. They work in the southeast, and the European Union wanted and demanded that the banana gatherers in our fields needed to have social security benefits. But these subjects were not considered employees, part of payroll, and they didn't have social security benefits. So they constituted an entity, a body, and with that body in which they united their efforts to cooperate, after that entity was constituted, we offered these banana gatherers the social security benefits that they deserved. They also had other insurance benefits. People working at docks, they work per day. They're like temporary workers, and some work per project only. So you'll realize that we submitted a proposal that's about to be taken into enforcement. We have a matrix of risks and conditions that include pathologies of different natures. There's cancer because of different occupations or different disciplines being observed in our people, or to other conditions. And currently we're working on wording and drafting a protocol, an admin protocol, a procedure to ensure that what we're doing is feasible. We can offer these protocol. If companies are in compliance with what we mandate them to do, then they can incorporate their workers to the services of Social Security that are offered. Dr. Ferris Iglesias, who else would like to comment or touch these points about successful initiatives to improve our people's health and reduce the risk that they're suffering at the workplace? Yes, Dr. Aaron Obed Mejia Quintana, the Peruvian counterpart. Oh, hello, how are you all doing? I greet you all. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate in these roundtables of discussion. Thank you for enabling us to get to know a bit more about the realities of each economy involved. I think it's very important for us to understand what's happening in the management system so we can all prevent the risks that are being observed at the workplace. In Colombia, we've seen what's happening. We're analyzing the demographics and the workers involved and we see what's happening with regulated subjects that are affiliated or not in different companies. And I think it's very important for us to administrate correctly what's happening with these entities in which the workers or unregulated workers unite and constitute a body that becomes a collective and that it's registered in 2019, 2020. They told us that 70%, 75% of our working population are working, but without being regulated. They're not regulated subjects. I mean, they're working out in the streets on a day-to-day basis. And something that I want to highlight is that I've heard your opinions, and you've mentioned about the longevity, the lifespan of our people or the demographics of our country. So in Peru, our people usually tend to live up to 70, 71 years of age. They're still strong enough to continue working. There's some that reach retirement age that they start receiving the benefit of a pension, but their pension is cut down to a 50 or 60%. So they don't receive 100% of their income. They do receive a 50% of what they were used to receiving while they were working. So they have to continue working after they met their time and requirements. They have other businesses, they have other trades or other activities being executed, activities that are not necessarily risky, but if we think about the risk prevention programs, I mean, they're not considered in that. So it's interesting for us to see how these bodies of collective subjects which are into trade or other activities or trades can unite and then obtain the benefits now in the present and in the future. Thank you, Dr. Mejia. Thank you, Professor Radoslavova. Yes, thank you. I might, with my comments, I might sound redundant. I might repeat what I said during my first participation, but I'll communicate what the ILO observes. We integrate our perspectives and grounds. We build this international health for public services, and to benefit and build our health. We foster that. What we recommend at that global perspective is we bet on building governance instruments. We have policies in place, programs in place, politics in place, and governance that enables us to observe the situation and the conditions of our countries so we can immediately improve the conditions and be reactive. We have to build policies and strong programs. So simultaneously and in order, under a system and a method, we can build ourselves to progress and have coverage, in this matter. So we have to strengthen our national institution systems. There's the legislative branch, then there's the financial analysis and contributions. There's authorities in place that have the power and responsibility to participate, to build a strong national health program at the workplace. There's the mechanisms to go through a national assessment or audit of companies. Then there's other services that I could speak about, like IT services, information services, occupational services, research mechanisms. There's ways and tools to provide support to small and medium-sized enterprises or SMEs and macro companies. These are all layered. It's part of the stratigraphy, and we correlate the stratigraphy of all our demographics with a systematic logic that can enable us to build a national system. If at a national level we react and build an improvement, narrow the gaps and develop the programs and draft policies and the guiding instruments, then we can have noticeable improvements. In that sense, I want to use the floor to discuss and thank these initiatives. And I thank you, Dr. Ferris, because you've worked a lot in Dominican Republic. We know your initiatives and we want to replicate your Dominican Republic programs in other countries. So that's a cumbersome subject. We want social security coverage. We want to work and prevent risks. We want to protect the demographics, our population, whether they're regulated or not. We have the demographics information compiled that can benefit us all. It's extremely relevant so we can replicate models. And I briefly want to mention that from the regional office of the ILO, or International Labor Organization, we're updating or going through an amendment to build a frame that's a strategy to formalize or go through the solemn process of building and drafting the strategy. It's called AMFADA. What we're doing at ILO is we're promoting the creation and integration of policies, of provisions, of law. And in this clear focus, we have parallel mechanisms that are the drivers that lead us to really contact the workers, the collectives, whether they're regulated or unregulated, in the citizenship. It's very important for us to measure productivity and health and balance at the workplace. So we have to foster and strengthen the mechanisms to protect our people's health, as I've said, at the workplace. And it's not just a whim. We're not working because it's just our whim. It's a human right. It's essential. It enables companies to be sustainable, to achieve productive levels that are acceptable. We need to have that present and all these elements present with the right light being shed. So I'll be very brief and I'll also comment. My comment is going to be correlated to what Professor Pereira mentioned. He mentioned also an issue about analyzing the cases with a gender perspective. It's a major challenge. We have an instrument that's a proposal, that's a roadmap that was drafted and adopted last year in the session of Cartagena about the economy of caregivers. It's gender issues. It's a multilateral analysis executed by the United Nations. We're working with other international mechanisms and authorities such as the ILO to draft the policies, the global frames in place and laws and regulations that enable women with this gender analysis to be part of the labor force. and be protected based on law for the principle of fairness and fairness and to be respected. I mean, thank you, Professor. So we listened to the four participation, Mr. Mauricio Muñoz Campos. We've listened to Professor Alessandro Lordello and to Professor Humberto Pereira. We, based on our experience, the Costa Rican experience, as your counterpart, I'll tell you that it's been very positive. Our institutions, our solid institutions have given us, they have accepted what we're doing. We have health services and programs. The Ministry of Health is also an entity that knows how to budget and administrate its budget and measure what's happening in different companies. The companies must submit the mandatory compulsory executive reports and measure conditions that the workers are facing. Have the Costa Rica Social Security authorities. It's mandatory for us to offer that Social Security coverage and benefits, even with its deficiencies. So these authorities have given support to the citizenship. In the recent years, the core subjects that are matter of our debate is the fact that we're trying to tackle the situation of those subjects of the demographics that are not regulated, workers, informal, temporary workers, rural workers, because the burden on them has been tough. The social burden on them is tough. So there are segments of the populations or the demographics that need to be protected as well. So we've gone through the legislative process and amendments or reforms. So our other types of citizens can also be covered as independent, freelance, or outsourced workers. And they should be under the umbrella of protection. That's what we've been working on in my country. There's a Ministry of Labor involved as a stakeholder that has to budget things. And in our country, we have a fee to be paid, to specific institutions, and it makes it all sustainable throughout time. We've analyzed the changes in our populations, our demographics. We sample those universes, and we analyze the economics that enables us to see the broader landscape. That's part of what we need to observe and continue studying in the near future. We need to support our populations. Thank you so much, Dr. Muñoz. Mr. Lordello, please.
A título de contribuição com a experiência do Brasil e o que auditou.
As far as the experience in Brazil, our Brazilian experience has led us to accrue what's happening. We see what's happening with the rural populations. And in Brazil, in our charter, in our constitution that dates back to 88, there's the rights enshrined for the rural workers. What's enshrined is the protection in our constitution by law. In 2023, last year, we paid $26 million to these samples of the demographics of the citizens that work in rural zones, in our fields, in our farmland. The rural worker is protected in the present, in our constitution. The floor is yours, ma'am. Sir? The floor is yours, sir. So now regarding what's been said by Juan Pablo about Social Security in Costa Rica, we can't hear you, sir. I think we can. Okay, pardon. I hope you can hear me. Okay. As I was saying, now regarding what we're doing at Costa Rica to protect our people and offer Social Security benefits. And I'll tell you what happened 30 years ago. We set the example 30 years ago because of the principle of the rights or Social Security benefits being them universal. That's the coverage. We have an entity that administrates the pensions in the Social Security authorities in Costa Rica. There's a specific scheme. And there's a specific authority or body. And 30 years ago, we've worked on things so it makes it all possible. The Union of Educators or Professors have access to the benefits and insurance, and many other institutions participate. So there are many institutions that were well administrated, and that past is still safe kept. But the present challenge is, we have to give things a different glance or analysis because societies have changed. And sometimes we've drafted policies or provisions which are erroneous. I mean, our society demands new components that should be enshrined in our law, which is interesting because you've just mentioned about how the workers in different trades have constituted collective bodies to have access to social security benefits. I mean, there's unions. There's unions being constituted to protect the workers before the employer. So all of these efforts between stakeholders can build strong ties, and the employer's ties or relations with employees and the unions involved and other stakeholders involved could work together to really build an access for protection for the workers in this case, or we can have access. Our institutions like INIS and other institutions participate so we can protect and give that coverage. I want to profit from the opportunity I have today I want to express my conclusions. That's a core idea. And it's very important for us to budget things and internally audit ourselves, internally and with external assessments. It's very important to have the participation of different international bodies like the ILO, WHO, and others, because we all have to work in compliance and to be in and respect the law. With international law, the conventions and laws and the national laws and legislations, and we have that. We have to go through the risk assessment. We have to analyze and go through the scrutiny of analyzing the risk at the workplace without doubt. This analysis of budgeting is something that depends on each country too. And there's certain trends. When there's changes of administration, changes of the models, or changes of the executive branch or presidents, there's new proposals. And sometimes that breaks that balance that exists when there's changes of administration or in the executive. There's programs that are beneficial for the population, for our demographics. And I believe that even if there's a change of administration, these programs should stay. And the governments and the administrations should be held accountable and respect the covenants and the agreements and the programs as well for the population. So we celebrate the end of this beautiful, robust sequence of dialogues. Thank you so much for the examiners that have taken part. Graciela Gil Montalvo, Galindo, Ms. Carolina Galindo, Avila, Munoz. You've just shared the three models, the three strategies, the three paths to protect the health of our workers. We thank all the examiners. We thank Juan Pablo Munoz Campos for sharing his presentation about mental health. That's in our radars. That's probably the future pandemic. So many healthcare conditions or mental conditions that the workers are now facing post-pandemic. We thank Professor Rados Lavaba, Mr. Ferris Iglesias. We thank Mr. Alessandro Lordello, Mr. Humberto Pereira. Thank you. Thank you all, Mr. Aaron Mejia. This has been a very robust conversation dialogue. We discussed the long journey in this road trip, in this journey with this landscape. And I want to mention some important takeaways or points from this closure ceremony. It's relevant for us to use the international instruments that are offered by the ILO, International Labor Organism. 185, 169, and 166 are the instruments that are the basis or the grounds from the international authorities. So read those framing instruments, give them all a read. Those are the protocols. Use them as guiding instruments to draft what's your own. And then we have been correctly organized. I know that this debate is tripartite. There's professionals involved. There's workers involved working in the healthcare risk. We are working to prevent risks at the workplace. There's a lot of room to progress. There's a lot of work to do. You're all organized. You're highly engaged. You're working on research, present research, future research. All the examiners and professionals have to continue working. We have to build a list of conditions and ailments and diseases that our workers could be facing in different sectors, and even consider climate change, which has an impact. Some of our workers living conditions that impact them negatively. There's people working out in the field affected by climate change. Climate is an issue. So the workers in different trades are using new technologies. They're working in delivery platforms and services, and they have to be given special attention. There are groups of our demographics, of our citizens that are vulnerable before these platforms and others. At the beginning of this conference, we mentioned the indigenous populations. We mentioned people working in the farmland, in rural zones. It's complex to tackle their issues, but we're progressing. There's samples of the population that deserve that and make us work harder. We have to build programs to prevent and to protect their health. So we have to mark the differences and branch out each economic sector in correlation to the risks and to the workers and the types of workers. We have to be very specific. It's a process of scrutiny. We have to think about the profiles of populations and the samples of the demographics universe. There's challenges, important challenges that we're facing when trying to protect the health of our workers. Risk prevention at the workplace is core. Sector by sector, it's important. You mentioned the mining sector. Sugarcane gatherers need to be protected. People out in the farm deserve our immediate attention. The models that we built include other models. A model or a provision does not exclude another law. We add an extra layer of protection to protect our citizens who are out there working. We celebrate the closure of this forum. We invite you to the International Congress that's going to be celebrated on May 6th and 7th here in Mexico City. And we're going to be discussing these protection mechanisms. We're going to open a calling so you can all participate in that conference. Thank you for your contributions. And on behalf of the formal secretary, Arvalo Velarca, and the general secretariat, our legal department posthold, Ms. Teresa Gonzalez, thanks you all for participating. And on behalf of Brandon Perez, the sub-leader, sub-post holder of foreign affairs thank you all for participating. I thank you for enabling me to be part of all these mechanisms and a sequence of conference of top dialogues to protect the future of social security in our countries. Thank you so
Recording
much.
stopped.